and now we can come to the next presenter, and that's the title of the presentation: Just Transition and the Safety of Offshore Wind Energy Workers in the United Kingdom. And the presenter is Eddy, Wiffa, yes, is that correct?
Yes.
From University of Aberdeen, United Kingdom. So the floor is yours. Please start, and don't forget 15 minutes. Yes, I know it's not nice of me, but I have no another possibility because, yes, I think we are all thinking of dinner a little bit, or not?
So, hello everyone. I'll do you all a favor, and I'll speak in 10 minutes. And that's because you've been generous enough to stay here till this moment. I wasn't expecting to have anyone in the room. And I'll take it away from the conventional academic conference presentations and talk about this like we are taking a walk, right? The talk is on the safety of offshore wind workers. And as we have these conversations around the energy transition and just transition, the big question is, who are those at the heart of the transition? Who are those at the heart of getting us to net zero? It's not the companies. It's not necessarily the government. It is the workers, your brothers, your sisters, your uncles, your friends. They will be the ones saddled with the responsibility of going offshore to build gigantic offshore wind farms, hundreds and thousands of them, sometimes under very, very stringent and challenging weather conditions. That will be their job. Let's start with the story of Ronnie Alexander. Ronnie was a 74-year-old security guard working in a remote location of an onshore wind farm. And he set out to work on this particular day, and, the weather turned really bad. It snowed, and he started freezing. He checked his working communication device. It had failed. He checked again. There was no backup. The heating in his cabin had failed. The generator also failed. So he tried to walk to see if he could, get out and get some help. He fell a few miles after and froze to death. Now, his family was paid 6 figures, about 800 and something thousand pounds, just under 900,000. But the words from his wife and his daughters really struck me, and they said they hope that the death of Ronnie provides a lesson for the industry. So as we begin to say so much about energy transition, and we look at the energy quadrilemma, and I know a lot of people have talked about the energy dilemma, the energy trilemma, and the energy quadrilemma, which is the fourth element of social acceptability. And that is where offshore wind workers sit within the context of the just transition. And it's that fundamental question that, is it fair that the people who are set with the task of getting us to net zero are doing it under the most unsafe conditions? And that unfortunately, particularly in the UK, the law, the regime under which they are meant to build those wind turbines are not fit for purpose. It is not in doubt that offshore wind is going to grow. It's growing exponentially. I mean, I remember the words of one of the UK prime ministers saying offshore wind is going to be to the UK what oil is to Saudi Arabia. So that's to give you a bit of a context of how far they're going. But as the industry grows, they need workers. Right now, as I speak, we have about 30,000 workers. The expectation is to get to 100,000 by 2030. Put that into context. If all these years we only have 30,000 and we need to ramp up productions, again, climate change is a reality. It means we need 70,000 workers in the next 6 to 7 years. That gives you a sense of the drive that would be happening in the next few years in order to recruit workers. What happens when, as a result of that speed to recruit so fast, you end up recruiting unskilled labor? It means it's very likely they wouldn't have the training that is required to work under those sort of conditions. What about the technology? If we look at a time, we would see very clearly that the technology is getting bigger, right? We're dealing with smaller offshore wind farms, but now we're dealing with heights of over 250. We're dealing with blades that are over, heights of over 150 and blades that are over 250. That's way longer than your Boeing 737. And all these things need to be transported. So as a result of that push, we're seeing a number of challenges, and these are all reported. So I have a number of publications, over 20,000 words of publication on this, and there would be a monograph about 80,000 next year. So if you want to read a bit more about this, definitely data is out there. But we are beginning to see that there's a lot of skills gap, and most of the incidents as we are seeing and experiencing is as a result of people not with sufficient skills. And that's because they've pulled people from other industries like tourism and marine industry more broadly to work in offshore wind. There's a poor safety culture overall. And these are some of the warnings from the industry, right? These are people within the industry, the environmental health and safety manager for Equinor. And so if these people are saying something, then we should take them seriously. And if you read the quote, it's saying a number of serious incidents have been happening, and there is a poor safety culture. The other quote by Andrew Linnington, which is really the workforce, is saying that workers who apply high safety standards are losing out to companies that are cutting corners. So we're seeing that as we ramp up the production and growth of the offshore wind energy industry, not just in the UK, but globally, a lot of companies are cutting corners. Because when there's a tension between safety and cost, then safety takes the back seat. So this is a really fundamental issue. So I stumbled on one of the letters from one of the regulators writing to the companies saying a lot of serious incidents have been happening and they are concerned that things will get worse. And that's just after COVID in 2020. So these are really recent events that are beginning to raise concerns. And what has happened? What really happened and made this situation go from bad to worse is because when the UK was moving offshore, and as we say, lawyers come in when problems, only when there's a problem. Everybody keeps on doing business as usual and everybody's happy once you're making money, but once the liabilities start coming in, you start looking for your lawyer. So what happened was, back in 2003, when the UK was looking to go offshore, the question was, do we have regulations for offshore safety? No, we don't. Do we have regulations for onshore safety? Yes, we do. You know what? Could we make a law that transposes all the onshore regulations and put them offshore? Yes, we can. So basically, the UK passed what we call the Application Outside Great Britain Order and basically moved onshore laws and made them apply offshore. Once you begin to look at the risk profile, it becomes very clear that the risk between onshore and offshore is significantly different. That was the fundamental mistake. 25 years after, we are warning that that was a fundamental mistake upon which the industry is significantly struggling. Current data now tells us that offshore wind health and safety incidents are 3 to 4 times higher in offshore wind than in offshore oil and gas. So the argument is, if the offshore oil and gas industry regulations are so advanced, and as we've proven that through research, why haven't we adopted what we now know as the safety case regulation in offshore wind? We've had these interactions, and the concern has just been that they don't have the resource. So there's a sense of denial that offshore wind is not as dangerous, and so we should not bother. But even if we were to even bother, the resources don't exist. Now, the presentation is really not to tell you all the whole story, and hopefully you get to read some of the research and be part of the work we're doing, but it's essentially to say this is becoming a really serious problem. That as much as we look at the transition, let's not ignore some of those benign issues around the safety of the workers, and that the the lessons are there. And while we apply them to offshore wind, you could equally be as proactive to apply them to even to the mining of critical minerals, because we have our loved ones and family members that are saddled with that responsibility to get us to net zero. The question is, who will bear the price? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for presentation and for time discipline.